Hello, Libration Nation. So this week, I am announcing that I am taking a tiny 2-week break from the podcast because I am working with my friends at Every Library to host some author interviews over the next 2 weeks. And if you don't know, Every Library is the only political action committee for libraries, and I've been working with them hosting author interviews and promoting libraries too. So coming June 13th at 2 p.m., I am interviewing author Mary Jane Wells. And then that same day at 7 p.m., I am interviewing author Alexis Landau with her narrator, Cassandra Campbell. The following week, on Tuesday, June 18th at 7 p.m., I will be interviewing author Alison Larkin. And then on Thursday, June 20th at 7 p.m., I will be interviewing author Jason June. So if you're interested in watching these live, I will post the links in the show notes. I also plan on putting them on the Drinks in the Library site as well. And so although I'm taking a small break from the pod, I hope you can tune in to these awesome interviews. The regularly scheduled podcast will be back in 2 weeks on Tuesday, June 25th. I'm really excited for the interviews I've already recorded, and I can't wait to get them out to you then. In the meantime, if you want to use it to catch up on episodes you might have missed, or make sure to like, subscribe, and review wherever you get your podcast, that is wonderful. And so today, included here is a throwback to my very first episode that I did with my husband, Bill, on the book Hyperion. So if you haven't gotten around to that episode, here it is. And as I said before, it was my very first recording, so the audio isn't the best. However, the jokes are solid gold. Enjoy. I am pushing record right now. It's running.
All right, let's go. Do you have an intro for this show?
Well, I do have an intro, but I think I'm gonna have that pre-recorded and just have it every time you listen to it, it's the same thing.
So you don't want to do like the professional podcast thing where we're just talking and it just rolls in like someone walked into the room and we were just here.
I mean, maybe it can. I think you can do both.
Yeah.
As you are very well aware, I'm not super sure what I'm doing.
I think you just lean into the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is our inaugural episode of Drinks in the Library. Very exciting. And I'm joined for the first episode with my husband, Bill Howard.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you for being here today, Bill. As always, it's a pleasure whenever we spend our time together, which is most of our time.
Which is 90% of our time.
Yeah, yeah. And so with this podcast, we're going to always have a drink featured in each of these conversations. A lot of times it will be, a drink that maybe is inspired by the book, or it could just be your personal favorite. And I want to ask you, which one did you go with?
Well, initially I tried to find a drink inspired by the book. There is a drink called Hyperion, and it looked like it was going to cost roughly $200 to be able to make a glass of Hyperion.
Mm-hmm.
So,
this is a fancy podcast.
It is a fancy podcast, but, there's something just effervescent and classic about a gin and fresca, which we refer to as the girlfriend, which it's in a series of drinks, and I don't want to spoil that for in case I come back and we do other episodes.
All your episodes will be Fresca-based cocktails.
Yeah, most of my life is a Fresca-based cocktail. But I think the girlfriend is going to fit the book for today pretty well.
Okay.
Because when I think of the girlfriend, I think of the future.
Oh.
And the book I chose is Hyperion, which is by Dan Simmons, which is I don't want to say a commentary on the future. It is science fiction.
Okay.
I would say it's probably hard science fiction. It's a very dense read in relation to sci-fi. Right. But all about the future and also being unstuck in time and traveling through time and various viewpoints through time. And if you have about 4 girlfriends, you too become unstuck in time, traveling through your own timeline.
Wow, you really tied that together quite well.
That's my gift.
I'm impressed. We're starting off strong here. So when you say it's set in the future, is it set on Earth? Where is it set?
It's at one point it's on Earth. So to understand Hyperion, to kind of take a look at it, it's a sci-fi version of Canterbury Tales, right? You have these pilgrims on their way in a pilgrimage that we're not really sure what it's about once it's at the initial introduction. They're traveling together. And the universe we're set in is that Earth has exploded at one point. The sun just kind of... This is where I'm a bad narrator, because I can't tell you... I can't recall why the Earth's no longer there.
Okay.
But Earth ended, but humanity has now occupied the entirety of the universe, called the hegemony? Hegemony?
Yeah, and it's all humans? We didn't find any other space...
That's the thing.
Okay.
We don't want to spoil the book too much, but we have one character who is our poet, who was actually one of the original... He was on the original Earth, and he was shot into space by his family, thinking that...
Tough look for my guy.
Well, you know, they decided to go down with the ship.
Okay. Oh, okay. So got it.
Yeah, and he was shot off into space. And the thing about this, kind of going into the weird time aspects of this book, is he's from thousands of years ago, but when you travel in space, there's like a stasis component. So you're aging at different rates than everyone else. Like by the time he gets to where he's going, he's like 300 years old with the mind of like a 20-year-old, you know. But that kind of sets up like everyone's from different points in history as they go on this pilgrimage.
Okay. It's giving me, what was that movie with the McConaughey during his reconnaissance?
During the reconnaissance, yeah.
Yes, where he goes back. Interstellar, yeah.
There's a
similar kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah. And hey, this was only, 30 years before Interstellar.
Ahead of its time.
Yeah, from the bygone era of 1989.
Yes, so it was ahead of its time. And so I guess part of this podcast, or what I want to focus on, is like the importance of stories and how they affect us. And we're in an era right now where the freedom to read is being challenged, and so I would like to talk to people about who were you when you read this book, and where were you in your life that it impacted you?
I was exhausted and also unstuck from time. We had You might recall, we had a child.
Oh, I was involved in this.
You were involved in this. And, for anyone who listens to this, who's had a kid, that first good year, 6 months to a year.
It's wonderful.
It's wonderful, especially with our child who, I don't think has slept yet, and she's 8 years old.
Yeah.
So there's a weariness that you have, but also... being up at 3 a.m. takes on a new meaning, and this book was kind of in that same lane. It's like, it's a little surreal. The book's surreal. My life's surreal. There's this little thing that depends on me, and I would do anything for it, but I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Just like some of the characters in this book.
Oh, you're great at the segues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, were you reading it at night while you were staying up with her some?
Yeah, I was reading it at night. I would read quite a few pages every night. It's the upside of this book too is, even though it's like, I think it's like 550 some odd pages, because it's like Canterbury Tales, you're broken up between different storylines. So there are breaks from the narrative, so it kind of, you can segment it out pretty well. And for whatever reason too, during that time frame, I had never been a big fan of science fiction literature. Like, I hadn't, other than reading Kurt Vonnegut, which I think is on that's not really a hard sci-fi
right
pattern. So like, this was me also exploring new genres of literature for myself too.
Yeah. Now, sci-fi, I feel like, and fantasy sometimes can overlap a little bit. And I mean, would you read fantasy before that, or I mean, what were your genres that you connect with? I know you You introduced me to Vonnegut when we got together, so.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I read some fantasy. I wouldn't say that was a genre I was uh, very into. I definitely read like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and Wizard of Earthsea was one that I read when I was a lot younger. I mean, I read a lot of Kurt Vonnegut, a lot of Salinger, just like all the books that would make you insufferable as a teenager were the ones I was reading.
Okay.
You know,
would you describe yourself as a teenager as insufferable? Who is that, Bill?
He's a very opinionated, moody, kind of lonely guy. He had strong opinions on music. Yeah. Well, and also as like as teenagers too, and I think probably with literature and also with music, it's like you're trying on a lot of different hats.
Yeah.
Right. Like I definitely went through like a phase with books where I was just slowly become a snob, because that's what we do as teenagers, right? Like we get into something, then we become a snob about it. Except for those just like those beautiful Labrador people that kind of enter everybody's life, who they get into something and they're just like, oh man, I'm happy you're here too.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of those people.
Right. Especially as teenagers.
Especially as teenagers, because like I do think it's one of those things where it's like since we're all trying on personalities, we don't notice that everyone else is trying that too, and we just feel like everyone else has it. Right. And so, like, I think literature-wise, I never really fell into trying to tie it back, because we're going down a tangent. But, like, I think literature-wise, I tried on a lot of different hats. And so I don't think I had I would just kind of flirt with a bunch of different genres. But, again, hard sci-fi, though, was not something I really spent a lot of time with. Like, it is kind of, it does strike me as interesting that, like, I was probably, like, this was my intro to hard sci-fi, so, you know, I was 32.
Right.
You know, and so somehow I just jumped over that whole ship, even though I liked, you know, movies that were sci-fi, television that was. So that's who I was.
At that time. Okay, and so when you were reading Hyperion, so what pulled you in when you were reading it that you liked?
I think there is some connection you can make to each one of the characters that is in this story. But there's one character in particular who is a scholar who is on this pilgrimage with everyone else, who has a baby. And it's a very arduous journey he's on with this baby. And so there was the initial kind of drawing of like, I have a baby. Why are you taking this baby on this arduous journey? And his story is it's agonizing through the book. I don't want to... Are we a spoiler alert thing? I don't think we want spoilers to the story.
I don't think this is about the spoiler. I do want people to get a good vibe for what it's about.
Yeah, so the gist of his narrative is, so he's traveling. This is Sol Weintraub, who he is on this journey as well. He is a scholar. His daughter had investigated this planet and the shrine they are going to see. His daughter is Rachel. Rachel starts to age in reverse. So a lot of his narrative is him having memories of his daughter slowly forgetting him.
Oh.
So it was both kind of, you know, that drew me in quite a bit. Also, I like a good world building as well. And so through these various stories, we're actually fleshing out a very complex world and universe.
Yeah.
And in doing so, I don't know, I'm a sucker for that. That's why I read Game of Thrones. Well, Game of Thrones. That's not the cool way to... I read A Song of Ice and Fire twice because I like the world building, and I like being like, oh, that's that sword that was made from a meteorite and that went down through the family through these many years. You know, like I like knowing those little nuanced things, and there's a lot of that in Hyperion.
Yeah. And you can get really into it. Like, there's people who are in Game of Thrones, like collect all of the stuff. And
Hyperion does seem to latch onto a certain type of person who is into world building as well, because you're not going to meet somebody who's like just kind of into the book Hyperion. Because one, it's 550 pages. You committed to get through this. We won't even go into there's a sequel that's another 500 and some odd pages.
I'll tell you, for the book club that I do for our neighborhood, I do try really hard to not pick anything over 300 pages because people complain.
Yeah. So if you meet somebody who read Hyperion and they finished it, they're into the book Hyperion. But it's also what keeps it from being, I think, part of the larger zeitgeist as well, because it is a dense read. And I also, I think it was the Foundation series was considered unfilmable Hyperion because of you're perpetually in different parts of the universe, parts of time, different relationships with time. It was considered unfilmable as well. Although I think Ryan Reynolds owns the film rights to this.
I think I tried to do a little research. I was going to say Will Smith, but maybe not Will Smith. They're two very different people.
Yeah, that is odd connection.
I'm pretty sure Will Smith owns something that I read recently, but
I hope he owns quite a few things, being Will Smith.
Yeah. Okay, so Ryan Reynolds has the right to it, so maybe it will come out. I love adaptions. You and I have been watching the Wool adaptation. What is it called? Silo. And that's been really good.
Yeah. That's a pretty true adaptation. I would say Wool and Silo, like, that setting and that universe lends itself to filming a little better than, say, Wool, especially being that the Silo is like one set, kind of lends itself. And it's a linear storyline, too. It's not jumping across characters and across the galaxy and across time as much. So, but yeah, I love a good adaptation. I even like the bad adaptations sometimes, too.
How did we settle on Dune? We might need to be careful. People might come at us if we say anything negative about Dune.
Yeah, people will fight you over the book Dune.
We love Dune.
I do not. But I recognize Dune is... well, it's a good parallel, right? Like, Dune is also another book that is hard sci-fi that I think people... either, unlike Hyperion, you either love or hate Dune.
Right.
To me, I think you love Dune if you read it as a teenager. Actually, I'll say it better. Dune is like the band Sublime, right? If you're a teenager and you read Dune, you had to love it. It's the only way to be a teenager. But if you're an adult who loves Dune and you read it for the first time as an adult, I got some questions.
Okay. I'll put your email in the show notes. People can send in their questions.
Yeah, send their questions. My email is President Joe Biden at whitehouse.com.
Well, hey, maybe we will get an adaptation. I would be down for it if we do.
Yeah.
So, now, did you read? This is the first of a series. Did you read the other books?
Yeah. So it's the Hyperion Cantos. Again, we have a poet in our crew.
Wow.
Who he's writing his masterwork as he's existed throughout the history of humanity, or post-Earth humanity. But the Cantos is Hyperion, Fall of Hyperion. I did read. It also is good. It's not as good as the first. Still have not mustered up reading the other two books because they are standalone too. You don't have to have read Hyperion or Fall of Hyperion to read Endemon and I'm a Worst Guest Ever.
Okay.
Likely Fall of Endemon. Seems like
Fall of Endemon. If not, we'll fill you in the
Again, if you hate mail can go to President Joseph Biden
at gmail.com. Oh, man. So coming back to the story, what would you say is like the vibe of the story? How is it arced? Is it sad? What's emotional?
I think it depends on the character that you're following. They all have kind of a different arc. You definitely feel like you are at the end of something. Like you feel like you're approaching an apocalypse or something. Like there's a mystery aspect to this too, where it's very sparse with details, and it just kind of like piecemeals them out to you throughout the story and throughout each cantos. And sometimes you have to connect the dots between these characters, like Canterbury Tales.
Right.
That you slowly see how they're intertwined in each other's life, even though they have no clue as to why they are intertwined in this way.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so they are approaching this end point that, hey, it's the first of 4 books. Apparently it's not a true end point, but to some degree it is. So there's aspects of hope, there's aspects of desperation. We have some characters that are just trying to find their way after, losing importance, it's all over the place.
A little bit of When I Used to Rule the World
Yeah.
vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the warrior character. Yeah, Colonel Fedman Kassad. He's like this legendary hero where, like, heroes, the events that made him a hero have now passed, and it's there's this search for meaning and purpose. There's also like the looming issue of you don't know what this character. They all reference this character called the Shrike.
A good or bad guy?
Well, he's the pain god.
Oh,
all
right.
God of blades, I believe, is
All
the term.
right.
But they constantly are referencing a Shrike cult on their pilgrimage is actually to these time temples that the Shrike seems to occupy and also protect. It's really hard. Throughout the book, it's hard to really ascertain, is the Shrike a truly good, bad, or just what is he? It even seems the people that have been obsessed with them that for their whole lives aren't really truly sure what the Shrike is.
I also want to ask you, do you know, well, I did read a while up when we started talking about this about the author. I think he's still alive today, correct? What do you know about him? Anything?
We talked about this just yesterday.
Okay.
I'm absolutely terrible with authors.
Okay.
Like, I will follow a series of a book. I'll read, like, I happen to know Kurt Vonnegut's name just because I read, 10 books where his name was plastered on there. But often don't learn a lot. So Dan Simmons, couldn't tell you anything about him. What that says about me as a reader, I'm going to walk this out. I often don't want to know more about the people who created things because there's the potential for it to sour the work that you're listening to, reading, watching.
Right.
And, I kind of want to have my own personal connection with this story or thing. So it is somewhat intentional sometimes that I just choose not to learn more about them. Other than there's a book by the guy that wrote the other thing. I'll try that out.
Right. Well, I think there's value to that. I mean, especially in a society where, people dedicate their whole lives to somebody and then that person gets canceled. I mean, we're all imperfect. So sometimes it's best not to know your heroes.
Yeah, but maybe I should pay more attention, though. Am I going to get canceled by accident? Because I'll be like, man, I really love that book, Hyperion. And they'll be like, by that guy who committed that genocide? Like the president of Lufatorda who murdered all of those people? I'd be like, yeah, Hyperion was great.
Oh my God. We're both going to get canceled in the first episode.
Because we have no idea the backstory of
this fella. Okay.
Canceled by association.
Oh.
Does this give us an insulation? Or they're going to be like, didn't you notice that the character was quite the... Mm-hmm. I'll be like, yeah, I thought that was the cautionary tale.
Right. Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, fingers crossed that is not the case, but we'll see.
Great series run on Drinks in the
Library. One-hit wonder. All right, my last question.
That would be quite impressive for only one episode of a podcast. To become so big it ruined our lives. And there were no other episodes. Is there a podcast like that where there's just one episode destroyed people's lives and then it just... I mean, because, like...
Oh, my God.
I guess maybe that, Meghan Markle... I mean, that podcast only did, one episode, but I think other things...
She had, at least 8, I think.
You think 8? Shocker, I did not follow it very closely.
Yeah, for the record, we're Meghan Markle mid-supporters. I don't think
Apologists?
we're
I'm not an apologist.
No, we're not apologists. She's fine. She's cool. I don't have anything against her.
Don't really have many opinions about
Yes, but you're right. She only had a few podcasts, and there are people with opinions about it, but I enjoyed what I listened to.
Well, we'll see you at the top of the charts before our careers end.
See you soon, Meg.
Get drinks with her, then I'll form opinions.
Oh my gosh. All right, so I think the most important thing is about reading and is, interacting with other people about the book is who would you recommend this for? Like you already said, world building enthusiasts.
Yeah, if you like a robust world and a kind of a mystery. I mean, it's not a rote murder mystery, but if you like connecting a lot of dots, it is very dense though. If sci-fi is not your thing, I jumped off with this. I don't know if I'd jump off with it. I mean, like, the thing with... It does do one thing with sci-fi very well, where it doesn't spend a lot of time trying to explain why things work. And, I hate that for horror movies, I hate it for sci-fi, I hate it in any movie, where it's like, just put me in the world and I'll agree these things exist. But once you start trying to explain it, then it breaks the world, because it's like, wait, that couldn't happen. You have to be willing to be immersed in a universe. That might sound absurd, but it's internally consistent the way things operate. Okay. So you have to like sci-fi. You have to, you got to be a commitment person. You're going to be married to this book for quite a bit. Aww. And that's me. Yeah, take the ride. I mean, it's just incredibly interesting. It's but it is dense. If you like a light, fluff, more approachable book, like Harry Potter's very approachable, right? Like the concepts are kind of put in front of you. It's not very dense. This might not be for you. Okay. It really is kind of hard sci-fi. Like I would say, it's the TV show equivalent. Foundation might be one, or but also, if you like paying attention to every single detail of what's going on. That's...
Bill, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks for inviting me. It would have been quite awkward for a podcast to take place in our home. I never got invited.
Well, here, if we keep going, I'm sure we'll see you again, and you can introduce us to your next
to the series Fresca-based drink. Yeah. I am a little, I'm both excited and a little concerned about my devices listening to me that there are a series of Fresca-based drinks out there now.
I know. We started it years ago.
Well, I don't know if we started it for us. It's kind of like the telephone was invented by two people at the same time and one got patented earlier.
Right.
I guarantee you other people are like, what'd go well with this gin? Fresca. I can't imagine this was an isolated thing. But here in Virginia, we like to think of ourselves as the forebears, the pioneers of Fresca-based alcohol.
Right. All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Here, cheers. Cheers. Ding. Ding. Thank you for spending some time with me and my guest for an episode of Drinks in the Library. For more information about the show, you can find us on Instagram at Drinks in the Library, on the World Wide Web, drinksinthelibrary.com, or shoot me an email at drinkspod@gmail.com. Until next time, cheers.